to start. I feel like there is this perception that when you do kind of interviews that they're very orchestrated, or there's this party line and they're like, oh, John's,
Mhm.
so composed, or it's John's tales. And we reached out to you. There is no off the record on it. Like you told me,
No. You I've done a number of interviews over the years, and my main reason for engaging the media is to keep pressure on the police
yeah,
to do their job. And I've never wanted the questions in advance because I want to respond spontaneously. If I have a made up answer, then I'll think, what was my answer for this question?
hmm
I'd rather just, ask the question and I'll spontaneously respond. And it could be, when did you stop beating your wife? And no boundaries,
I love
on the questions.
it. I got lots of questions.
Yeah. And so it's easier for me.
Yeah,
It's almost like I don't have to prepare.
ideal. Well, I did prepare
I'm sure.
for the both of us.
Thank you. Okay, good.
JonBenét, she would be, we were talking about this earlier too, like she would be almost my age right now.
Yes, I realize that.
And what is that like? Like, what is she, when you picture her, she's stuck at 6, I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely. She's still my little girl, and I can't imagine what she would be like as an adult.
Do you feel like you're ever stuck in 1996?
No, I've learned two things. One, life's not easy all the time, and life's not always fair. And it's like, okay, those are the game rules. Let's keep at it. And one of the things I've noticed with families that have lost a child, and I've looked at this in some detail, I don't know what the percentage is. It's a majority percentage end up in a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And for Patsy and I, we fortunately, what really got us up off the floor was the realization we have 3 other children now that need us desperately to be strong. They're hurt, they're crushed, they've lost. At their age, they shouldn't have to deal with the loss and death of a family member.
Do you feel like you're still in shock? Or do you
You,
feel like
you
you have a
don't
good
get
grasp?
over the murder, the loss of a child. You move beyond it.
Did you ever give yourself time to have a pity party? Because if anyone deserves a pity
You
party.
do once in a while, yeah. Well, what was interesting was sometimes I'd be down, Patsy would be up, and we sort of could offset each other.
We'll get into, I think, why they kind of looked at you guys as a whole. But even in looking at the family, I do feel like, at least initially, Patsy like bore the brunt of that.
She did,
And for like a
big
long
time.
time, I even watched something they did on Netflix a while ago called The Casting JonBenét. And there's like a line in there where the guy was like, oh, I bet she was probably a horrible bitch of a mother.
No, she was a wonderful mother,
And I don't know,
amazing mother.
why do you think they latched onto her so much? When I know
don't
that
know.
there was, if people want to have questions about what happened in the home, why is it her that everyone
I don't
became
know.
fixated on?
Patsy was a very strong woman. Maybe didn't come across so good on television, I was told by people. But she was a wonderful mother. She's a wonderful stepmother. And I never heard her say anything negative about anybody. She's just a good person. And so for her to take the brunt of that assault is just so unfair. When we lost JonBenét, she got very focused on Burke. I mean, that was our goal, was try to give him as normal a childhood as we could possibly give him amidst all this chaos that was going around us. We were afraid. Somebody had attacked our family. We don't know who it was. And we were frightened, quite frankly. And one of the challenges was we wanted to keep Burke out of out of video and pictures so that people would know what he looked like. And so how do we get him from, we were living with friends when we were in Boulder, so he could finish his school year. How do we get him to school without being photographed? And it became a project. And the way it was diversion from grieving. We would send out a decoy car. Burke would be in another car on the floor in the back seat.
Just to go to school?
Yeah, to go to school. And we'd get him to school unphotographed because we wanted to protect him.
What were the kids at school like to him?
Well, the kids are wonderful. And
Really?
Oh, yeah. And
I feel like that's the first time I've ever heard that. Normally school age kids are awful.
well, I say that, I mean, from my perspective, they seemed like they really were great.
Did you guys have any moments with him where you're asking, I think about like kids, like what are the things that the parents don't know? Like what's happening?
No.
You know,
You know your children.
well, and I'm not even necessarily talking about like him doing something, but I'm
Yeah.
saying like, they hang out together, they have the same group of friends. Like, was there someone that maybe she didn't tell mom and dad about, but she's going to tell her brother about, or her brother? Like, did you guys
Yeah.
have any of those like moments with Burke to be like help us help us figure this out?
No, because we really just wanted him to be separated from it, from the chaos we wanted him to be normal. And that was very difficult because being followed around by the media and going through the grocery store line and seeing your sister's picture on the front of the tabloid, it was difficult to give him a normal life.
Do you think he might still know something that he like
No.
doesn't even know he knows?
No. Burke's a very solid person, despite all. And went to college, graduated, had a good job ever since. Well thought of by his employers and very, very disciplined. Buys used cars and, he's a good adult. He was a good son. If he knew anything, it would not be something he would thought
Is important.
important.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I wonder if there's something in there, like, even so. I know in the Dr. Phil, one of the things that came out was the idea that you used a flashlight to put him to sleep, and that he came back down to play with a toy. Like when he's down and people are sleeping, has he ever talked? Like, did he get the sense that someone else was in the home? Did he hear anything? I don't know how long was he up?
No, we've never asked him that. I don't know. I didn't know, frankly, that he got up again. I'm not sure he did. Again, that's fiction. There's so much fiction out there.
Because it's just thrown out there. It's just Dr. Phil who says, you got up to play with a toy, and Burke says, yeah, I did. It was something that I wanted to put together. And then it kind of just like fades
Well,
away.
again, when we got home, JonBenét had fallen asleep.
But I know you and Burke
I put her
came.
to bed. Burke and I sat down and tried to put together one of his little toys for a little while, just because he wanted to. And then he went off to bed.
You're saying like that whatever Dr. Phil said and Burke said on the show, he didn't come back down?
I didn't know that he came back down if he did.
Does
He
stuff
may
like
have-
that make you want to be like, oh my gosh, maybe there's something he knows?
Burke would have said something if something was weird, but
Okay.
he may have misunderstood the question
Sure.
too. That,
Do you think Burke regrets doing it?
well, probably. But the things that were interpreted by the internet crowd, well, he's smiling. Burke talks with a smile,
Yeah.
just the way he is. You ask him, what time it is, he'll smile.
Yeah, they lit him up after that.
I know it. And it was very unfair.
Do you think there's like one thing that those people who will never believe you like hone in on, or like one thing you're like, man, if we would have done this thing differently?
I don't know if there's one thing, but, we were portrayed as very rich people. We didn't consider ourselves rich. We built a little computer business, sold our interest to Lockheed, and
I mean, for like a pretty penny though.
but I got that was more money than I ever thought I'd have in my life, But we didn't. I still was working. Still figured I needed to have a paycheck coming in, and but we were portrayed as I was president of a company that had done $1 billion in revenue. Well, we were a distributor, we're like a grocery store. You got to sell a lot of milk and eggs to make a little bit of money, and that was the kind of business we're in. So in our industry, that was not a huge business, but that was publicized a few weeks before JonBenét was murdered in the local paper. But they perceived, therefore, I must be a billionaire. Well, that wasn't true. I was an employee of Lockheed. But people don't like rich people. And we were portrayed as super rich, callous, everybody knows rich people don't love their children kind of people. I think. I don't know. And then we got into this child beauty thing, which Patsy and JonBenét had fun with it. And Patsy's philosophy with our kids was let them try anything they want to try. Patsy, when JonBenét she'd have been maybe 4, I guess, was diagnosed, or maybe 3 or 4, diagnosed with ovarian cancer, stage 4. which has about a 5-year life expectancy, and that's it. And Patsy was so distraught. She'd say, God, why did you give me these beautiful children if you're not going to let me be here to raise them? But she was a fighter, and she beat it. She was in remission. For her, it was a huge gift that she could now perhaps look forward to being with her children when they go to college, get married, and have her grandkids. But I think deep down she knew that may not happen. And so she tried to cram a lot of mother-daughter stuff into their lives together. She was a natural. She loved performing.
She's a stunner, yeah.
Yeah, that's just the way she was. And she'd put on little skits at home and make us interrupt our dinner and watch the skit that she and her friends put on.
Yeah.
So it just, that was her personality. And they had fun with it, but it wasn't an obsession.
Yeah.
And of course, the media presented it as Patsy was this dominant mother who was living vicariously through her daughter, forcing him to do this stuff. That was nonsense. JonBenét had fun with it and loved it.
If people say that you profited off of it, what's your response to them?
You're joking. I lost my job. I was not employable. I had a company tell me, look, we'd like you to come work for us, but we can't afford to have our good name on the front of the National Enquirer, so we can't hire you. I was unemployed for, gosh, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. And I couldn't get a job. Lockheed was wonderful to me at the time. At this time, they couldn't have been more wonderful to me during the time I was still working for them. But they were in the process. They had acquired our company to try to diversify their business model. And after a couple of years, they decided, we can't do it. We don't think that way. We're, military, industrial, government contractor. We don't know how to deal in the consumer world.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were in the process of selling us and 4 or 5 other companies they'd bought to try to change their model. And they engaged a conversation, I guess, with GE, and GE was going to buy us, it looked like. And I'm sure, and I don't fault them, great company, but this Ramsey guy is a
lot of baggage.
It's a baggage. It's big baggage. This isn't going to work. And I didn't work for another, 5 or 6 years because I couldn't get a job. We were scraping by, basically, selling assets, selling our home, just trying to create an income that way. But how could I have profited from this? That's absurd.
I think people would just look at the books. I think they would say, "Oh,
well, the first book,
lawsuits."
we did get an advance, and that kept us going for a while, financially. By the time I wrote the second book, the whole book market had changed, and the advances just weren't there. But I did that second book mostly to help people, because I'd gone through this trauma of course, the loss of a child. My faith, was really challenged. How could God let this happen to a child? And the book I wrote was really, I felt very compelled to try to help people with the process. The journey I went through wasn't to make money at all.
A lot has had to have changed over 30 years. Like when you think about you're in it day one in the house, you think it's a kidnapping. How do you think differently now about the ransom note than you did day one?
Well,
At least I have to imagine, if it were me, I imagine that I've picked this thing apart 10 ways to Sunday.
it didn't make any sense, first of all.
I know in some of the interviews they bring up for Patsy that it goes back to the note, and I think one of the reasons they keep those who believe she wrote it perpetuate the idea that she wrote it is because it seems like it's not a clear answer or direction of how much of the note she saw. Because initially she's it's your daughter, we have your daughter, and then she goes up and looks, but then she talks about later looking out the window and seeing that it's a marked car and being concerned. And people will say, oh, how did you know that that was later on the note? People will say, oh, when she calls 911, how does she know how it's signed if she only saw the first page? 30 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know. It was chaos that morning, and I really thought I could get JonBenét back. I really did. We'd arranged, I don't have $118,000 laying around, but a friend of mine who was my banker got my ATM limit on my Visa card
Jacked up.
jacked up. And I gave that card to a friend, I don't know who it was, somebody that was there. I said, go get the money. And they came back and didn't get the money. And I was like, why didn't you get the money? They're like, well, no, we don't need to do that yet. But anyway.
Why 118? That's something that everyone's obsessed with.
Yeah, it meant something to the killer.
What do you think it means? Like, I mean,
Well,
again,
the only number that correlates that I know of is my bonus that year from Lockheed was $118,000, and it was paid in January.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're in December. It was on my pay stub
Did you have those somewhere in the house?
Oh yeah, I'm sure laying around somewhere.
Did they ever find them?
I don't know.
So it comes back to somebody who's like, so clearly they know she's in the basement. They're not actually looking to get the money, but you think it was more of a message?
I think it was a mix. I mean, why not $1 million? Why not 500? Why not a big number?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big number, but doable. And why 118? Why not 100? Why not 200?
150.
It meant something to somebody.
People they just pick it apart.
Oh, I know it.
This is what happens.
It's crazy. It's like I was criticized for disturbing the crime scene when I found JonBenét. Oh my God, he moved the body. If you're a parent, what would you do? You'd pick up your child. I was relieved I found her. Thank God. Took the tape off her mouth and tried to untie her wrists. I couldn't because they're tied so tightly. I didn't see the garrote. It was so deeply embedded in her throat. Oh, he disturbed the crime scene. That was wrong. It's like, that's laughable to even say something like that. Of course you would.
And have you ever been back in?
The house? No.
Would you ever go back in?
No. We couldn't initially. This wasn't even. A friend of ours helped us move, packed up all our stuff, and we moved to Atlanta, which was our home. That's where my family was. That's where Patsy's family was. JonBenét was buried there. My oldest daughter was buried there. So I was accused in the media of fleeing to Atlanta, but
Yeah,
home.
so that's something that people talk about is they say, oh, so I mean, day one, they find JonBenét, and within the hour, John's on the phone saying, I've got to get to Atlanta. And people say it was for a business meeting. Like, what was that?
Well, that's not quite the way it was.
Yeah.
But there's so much misinformation out there.
Yeah.
It was hard to even combat any of it. But Atlanta was our home. We had a family cemetery plot.
Yeah.
That's where JonBenét was going to be buried. My oldest daughter was killed 4 years earlier in a car accident. She was buried there. That was our focus, to get JonBenét buried, taken care of. Boulder was not our home. We had a house there, had a job there, but it wasn't home. Home was Atlanta.
Is home, do you mean like you had a support system?
Yeah, and we lived there for 30 years.
When you made that, would you make the call? Because did you or you didn't make a call to
I
start
don't
working?
remember how that evolved. No, I didn't, actually. I'd asked one of the detectives. There's only one detective there that morning. Everybody else was on vacation. It was day after Christmas. But there were lots of detectives and police there. And I can't remember what I said, but like, I want to go home. And he said, yeah, that's fine, go. And Lockheed sent one of their airplanes out, which was wonderful. And flew us back to Atlanta.
So,
And took one of little Burke's friends with him at the last minute.
oh, really?
Yeah.
What friend came with him?
I can't remember his name, but it's one of his buddies, and the mom, they were at the airport seeing us off, and I forget how it came up, but whatever his name was, Taylor, can he come with us? And we're like, I'm sure he could, but I don't know that his mother would
Well,
like
yeah,
that.
what are we like?
And his mother, yes, that's great, wonderful.
Oh, wow.
So Burke and Patsy and I and this little friend are on this Lockheed plane that flew us back to Atlanta. And that's as far as our planning had gotten. There was no planning. You're in shock. When we left the house that morning after we found JonBenét and never went back in that home, we were staying with friends. Friends took us in, and a lot of our friends were there to support us.
Yeah.
And the police came several times, and we sat and talked to them. And when it started to not go so well, because we trusted the police, we think, my God, they're our saviors. This is in their hands, and we trust them. And I had gotten a call from one of the fellows I worked with. He said, I got a call from inside the system. Get the best defense attorney he can get his hands on because they think he killed his daughter. This is like the next day. And I was like, unbelievable. So anyway, the police would come to the house and we'd talk to them as much as they wanted. They'd ask questions and we did the best to answer them. And then they said, one of our friends that was there, bringing food and help, comforting stuff, was a former attorney with the district attorney's office. And he was kind of observing things, you know. And
That's Mike?
Mike, yeah. And the police were saying, well, we need you to come down to the station. Please come here. We can't. We're secure here. We're safe. Patsy's sedated in bed. She's not capable of getting dressed and going down to the station. You come here, please. Oh, no, we need you to come to the station. Well, why? And this, I think, was Linda Art, actually, now that I think about it. And then Mike stepped in and said, time out. Because he knew the police department. He'd worked with me before. And he said, we'll get back to you. We're not coming down to the station today. We'll get back to you. And the next day, and I'd gotten that call, which I hadn't told anybody about, that I needed to get a defense attorney because the police thought I killed my daughter. This is the day after. They hadn't even looked at evidence or looked at our family history or anything. It was just like, it had to be the father. It's always the evil father.
Were they thinking it was you? Mm-hmm. So
this was Linda Art. I'm sure that.
So Linda thought it was you, and then
Yeah.
this idea of Patsy comes from someone else?
Apparently.
Okay.
And so our focus was to get JonBenét buried properly in our family cemetery in Atlanta, get back to our family for support. And we did that within days of this happening. And what we learned, this was part of what made us really mistrust the police, was we went back to Boulder to get Burke back in school after we buried JonBenét and to help the police. You know, and our attorneys, who Mike had brought in on his own, he had said, John, would you allow me to do some things here that were necessary? When we did this timeout, we're not coming to the station. I said, yes, absolutely. So the next day he's introducing me to my attorney. One attorney can't represent both parties. So Patsy had to have an attorney.
We have these Crime Junkie rules, and one of ours is always get a lawyer. So, like, first of all, I would have done that day one.
Yeah, and you know.
Our other is we always say, like, you don't know everyone inside and out 100%.
Yeah, that's true.
But did you ever question, like, does she know something? Did you guys ever have a moment in private where you're like, or never, ever?
Never, ever. Patsy has survived stage 4 ovarian cancer, was given the gift of life again for a while, which she was so thankful for. And see, originally, our attorney said, look, this is nuts that you're even looked at as suspects. But this will get resolved in a couple months. So, if you hire a heart surgeon, you better hire a good one.
Yeah.
It's going to be expensive, but it's only going to last a couple months.
Yeah.
And it lasted about 3 years. And we got to the point where we said, we're out of money. We can't keep paying. And they said, it doesn't matter. We're committed to getting this horrible wrong corrected. And so they worked on our behalf for several years for no charge.
Oh, wow.
But we were out of money. Didn't matter.
When was that? Like, how long did it take to, like, burn through it?
A couple of years, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
What did they think about you guys doing CNN?
Oh, that was a mistake. We shouldn't have done that.
Was that like did they advise against it? Did they think that at the time?
They strictly advised. Well, we never asked them. We were back in Atlanta for the funeral. Some of our Boulder friends were there. They say, "Oh my God, the media's going crazy. You've got to show them that you're normal people, and Boulder's a wonderful place." And they're really focused on making Boulder not suffer a reputational damage, nuts. But that was their focus.
That's weird, though, right?
Oh, totally weird.
What was their goal? Like to make Boulder look safe? Like, I don't think it makes Boulder look good because you guys are saying there's a madman in Boulder.
Yeah. Well, and of course, Boulder was like the authorities, the mayor at the time said, "Oh, nothing to worry about. There's no killer out there," because she'd been told by the police that it's the parents. We know it's the parents. We just got to prove it. And it was weird. It was weird. But we shouldn't have been doing an interview like that.
What did your lawyers say when they because, did they just see you on TV one day? Because I think that's the thing. People would be like, I don't understand. Like, John's a smart guy. He's consulting his lawyers for everything. How does his lawyers not know he's going on CNN?
At that time, we'd been introduced to our lawyers, but we then immediately flew back to Atlanta for John Ramsey's funeral. We had not met with our lawyers.
Oh, okay.
It was a horrible mistake for several reasons. One, we were in no shape to do an interview. There's no point in doing an interview other than to satisfy our friends who are pressuring us to show us.
Why did they want you on TV so bad? Like, that's the part that never made sense.
Well, they were concerned that the media was instantly piling on us as the killers, and that was horribly wrong, and you need to show yourself and defend yourself.
Why are your friends like? I appreciate that they care for you, but it's just like.
Well, they don't know. They weren't any more expert at it than we were, and so we just reluctantly agreed to do it. But in retrospect, that's shouldn't have happened. And our attorneys, well, in fact, from that point on, our attorney said, "No, you're not. We are not going to respond to the media accusations. You're not going to respond to them. We're going to defend you." In fact, they said, "Look, we will guarantee you one thing, money back guarantee, we'll destroy him in court. This will be a cakewalk if it gets to that point." But they said, "We can't practice law in front of a CNN camera. That's not our job. We don't know how to do that." And they were frustrated by that because we were being accused in the court of public opinion, but they couldn't respond.
Because there seems like there was this huge rift that I've not seen in such a stark way. I've seen it happen before, but between the DA's office and the police. And it's and you had lawyers who I think knew, they knew the DA, kind of grew up with them, worked with them. So I think that you guys obviously had an amicable relationship. They're the one you eventually go and talk to.
Right. I don't know. What I was told, the police were like, "Oh, we know who did it. Go arrest him and prosecute him." And the DA says, "Well, show me the evidence." "Well, we don't have that much evidence. We just know they did it." And so the DA wouldn't charge him. And the police took that as an offense. And apparently that happened a lot. That happened in our case.
I feel like there was this circle where it was a lot of that, where I kept hearing the DA's get the evidence. The police would say, and I don't know what's true, but the police would say, "We're trying to get the evidence, but you're stalling us."
Right. Well,
Like-
that's kind of what
Do you feel like that, like, and I don't know what advice you were getting or what was happening, but I do see moments where there are certain things where I think, like phone records, like the police say they don't have phone records until like a year later.
Oh, no, we gave them everything they asked for when they asked for it. Early on, we gave them phone records, we gave them credit card records, full access to our bank accounts, everything. Everything they asked for. The only thing they asked for a year later, which they should have asked for
Yeah.
in the beginning, was our clothing that we were wearing that morning, because they found unidentified fibers, pubic hairs that were not identified. A year later, somebody said, "Oh, you should have asked for their clothing." Well, they finally did, and we had to show us a picture. I don't even remember what we were wearing. But we gave them everything they asked for, when they asked for it. Handwriting samples. We had to write that horrible note right-handed and left-handed. So they had samples of our handwriting, which didn't match. So they wanted to arrest us
Okay.
on probable cause. They probably did this, so let's arrest them and beat a confession out of them. In fact, we were told by the DA two things later, years later. The whole police case was based on they didn't think we acted right that morning. And the strategy to solve the case was to bring intense pressure on Patsy and I so the innocent one would confess.
What did they mean by you didn't act right? So like, what were the things that were bothering
that's
them?
the interesting thing. I read that there was one detective there, this woman, who, I don't know if she'd ever investigated a murder or not, probably
Linda
not.
Arndt, yeah.
Linda
Because she came when it was still a kidnapping, right?
Yeah. They went to the sheriff's office, got a book on how to deal with kidnapping. They didn't know. And I read her report much later, and it was just nuts. But the things that she observed would say, yeah, that's not what you'd expect because of the way she wrote it. For example, she said, I observed him going casually through the mail, waiting for this phone call from the kidnapper. I was looking for another communication from the kidnapper. We had a pile of mail that had come through the front door slot, laying on the floor. I was going through it to see if there's anything else from the kidnapper. She should have been doing that. But she interpreted it as casually going through the mail while waiting for a call to come in. She also said 10 o'clock came and went. John didn't go nuts because we didn't get a call. The note said, I will call you at 10 o'clock tomorrow. I didn't know if tomorrow was tomorrow or the day we were in. So when 10 o'clock came and went, I thought, oh my God, I got to wait another 24 hours for this call to come. So it wasn't a big surprise that he didn't call because it said tomorrow in the note. What was the other thing? It was just nuts. Oh, when he found JonBenét, he didn't cry. There was no tears. People react differently to trauma, but when I lost my daughter Beth in a car accident, JonBenét's older sister, I was mad. I didn't cry. I was mad. Why did this happen? I was mad at God. With Beth, and then with JonBenét, it was, and what I guess they didn't understand was when they're making these observations of our behavior. When I lost Beth, I got a call. It was over. I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't get her to the best medical treatment. I couldn't go by her side and comfort her. It was over. It was done. She was gone. With JonBenét, it wasn't over. I could get her back, and I really thought I would, but I had to keep my wits about me, and I had to keep my head together and do whatever I could possibly do, not knowing what to do. But
Which is actually how I think I would respond to a traumatic situation, is I'm very like jump in and act.
yeah,
The thing that I think other people don't understand, that this is the one that was hard for me, is like it's said over and over by Linda Arndt that you and Patsy are just like completely separated. What was your
well,
interpretation of
Patsy
that?
was literally sitting on the floor with a big bowl in front of her, ready to throw up, quite honestly. She was devastated. And so she was over there, that's fine, that's okay. I was focused on trying to get JonBenét back. How do I get the money together? He wanted $118,000 in an attaché case. How do I get the cash together? I was working on that. It's I got to get my daughter back. That was my focus. Patsy's okay.
She's got friends around her.
She had friends around her. I got to get my daughter back.
That was the other thing. Linda says in her interpretation of things that you disappear for an hour.
That's not true.
Yeah.
No. I was looking out the window occasionally to see if I could see anything. But no, I didn't disappear for an hour. Linda Arndt was nuts. She, on national television, said, well, I knew he was guilty because I saw it in his eyes. I thought, well, that's quite a talent. But she was way in over her head and not, I don't think she was playing with a full deck.
Aside from that first day, did you ever do other interviews with her or have much interaction with her?
None.
Did her and Patsy end up having a relationship with some kind?
Well, she was our savior. I mean, she came to help us. You call the police, you expect them to come to help. Yeah. We trusted her initially before we'd seen this report, all these crazy observations. And so she was kind of our policeman personified. We didn't know any of these other people that had come involved from the police department, but Linda was there that morning when we had this horrible tragedy in our lives. So it's kind of a bonding in a way.
So did they, even after that, her and Patsy had conversations afterwards?
They had a few.
Okay, yeah, I've heard that, but I didn't know. Yeah. It seemed like you guys had such a bad experience with her that I was surprised.
Well, at the time, we didn't know it was a bad experience. You call the police, you think they know what they're doing. And that's, you trust them totally to do the right thing. And
did Patsy ever tell you what they talked about? Because I think that's like a big mystery to people. Is like why she seems
I can't remember. It's been so long ago. But Patsy wanted to know who killed her daughter, and what are you doing? What's going on? That was the kind of the level of conversation. I'm pretty sure.
Gary Oliva, did you want to talk about him?
Oh, yeah. He was the lead that the DA gave us. And said the police won't follow up on this properly, but it's a significant lead.
And it was back in the day. I remember reading his name.
Yeah, it was early on.
In the interviews you guys did back in 98 when they were like, do you recognize this name? Do you recognize this name?
Yeah.
And Gary Oliva was on there.
Yeah. And the circumstantially is very compelling. I know our guys looked at it, our investigators, and kind of confirmed the circumstantial information that was given to us and turned it over to the police. My memory is that they interviewed him, but kind of blew it off. I don't know if they did DNA testing, handwriting samples.
I've seen some handwriting more recently. I don't know if they just recently got collected, they're bringing it up again, but I've seen some handwriting samples that look promising. But I also think that handwriting 30 years later now, people look at it sometimes the way they do with bite mark, which is kind of junk science. So I don't know.
It's not admissible in court.
Yeah, and I don't even know if they would, the way that they felt so strongly about Patsy in 1996, I don't know that anyone would feel that way now if we.
Well, again,
if it were a new
it was
case.
Wrong to feel that way back then. Because she was a 4.5 out of 5, which is pretty much no way, but.
I think it was because it was her notepad pen from to your point. It was
well, again, yeah, but so it was in the house, and the person was in the house before we were, and none of that. It was her paintbrush. That was okay. Sorry, we didn't have the paintbrush locked up.
Yeah, it seems like there were these cultural shifts. I think there was that distinct moment in 2016 when everyone started looking at Burke, and that's become the big story now.
That's absolutely insane. Burke was a 60-pound, 9-year-old little boy. This was a sexual assault, a violent assault. It's just, even the police immediately said no. He was interviewed by a child psychologist, which I guess is normal, for 2 days early on, and they said no, absolutely no way. He was wasn't aware of anything that happened, and certainly wasn't the killer. And so that's just absurd foolishness.
What was your thinking that morning when you're getting him out of the home? Because I know you guys go to check on him. You think he's still sleeping. He says when he does his Dr. Phil that he's awake, but he's clear there's
Right.
something going on. He's like, I'm not messing with it. I just am
Right.
like waiting till they come and get me. Why did you guys want him to not be in that environment?
Well, the police were there. It was craziness. He was a little boy. We wanted him safe and protected, and he took some of his Christmas presents with him and went to stay with a friend in his house. It was a way to get him out of this nightmare into a safe place.
Did you guys feel like he was safe? Like, I think
Yeah,
that was it hard? Because I think it would be hard for me to I'm missing one child. Like, I don't know if you could get me to let go of the other one.
Yeah. Well, no, we trusted our friends. They were good friends. Their son was Burke's age. They were buddies. They'd been friends for a long time. It was a safe place for him to go.
Did they have, because Fleet took him away, but then Fleet comes back, right? But were his in-laws or something at the house? So there was like someone there with the kids? 30 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know. It was chaos that morning, and I really thought I could get JonBenét back. I really did. But I'd never dealt with that, or John Douglas, who's probably the premier crime profiler, started that whole FBI program, crime profiling. We spent some time with him over a period of time, and his profile of this was that this was a fairly young person, 20s to 30s, fascinated with the movies because there's some movie quotes in the Ransom Note. And was either very angry at you personally, John, or very jealous of you, John. This wasn't about JonBenét. That's John's assessment.
And do you still believe that?
I think that's part of it. I really do. But whoever did this is a monster.
Do you believe that you're the why?
I accept John Douglas's theory as credible. I really do.
Yeah.
2 weeks before her murder, our company had achieved $1 billion in sales for the year.
Right.
And for us, that was a big deal. And I wasn't even paying attention. And our financial guy said, "Hey, we're going to hit $1 billion." It's like, holy mackerel, we need to have a party for our employees and make a big deal of it. And our marketing lady said, let's let the newspaper know. And I had this gut feeling, another lesson, pay attention to your gut feelings. I had this gut feeling, it's a bad idea. But I let him do it.
Why does if it was about the money and your greed and going back to a lot of things the note said, what do you think the way that the sexual component to this and the way that they staged it, why that piece of it?
I don't know.
If it goes back to being about you and about money, that's
I know,
what
it doesn't make sense. I agree. No, well, whoever did this is crazy, demented human being.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't make a lot of it, I don't know.
I know you guys have been extremely clear that there was no sexual abuse on your part, any family member's part.
Our doctors can testify to that.
Well, that was my question. So I know that you guys have been clear. Do you think that she wasn't abused by anyone ever, even if there's
We don't know that for a
Okay.
fact. No, we don't. I mean, we never suspected that, but we don't know that.
Yeah, but most people don't, right?
No.
But it's 1 in 5 girls are sexually assaulted.
Yeah. We don't know for sure.
Do you know, did they ever look into knowing John Douglas's profile? I know he said 20 to 30, but his profile of this being a young, really unsophisticated person, did they take a really hard look at the other kids in the neighborhood?
No, they never did any neighborhood survey. They never went door to door, which is a huge mistake.
What's so wild to me is they like the first officer, French, I think was his name. He goes to the room that JonBenét's found. He just doesn't open the door. It's latched, so he's like, "No, thank you."
Right.
How does Fleet White open the door and not see
I
it?
don't know. If that's true, that's a huge red flag. She was right there. I mean, it
Because you like the second you open the door,
Oh,
you see the
in a
white blanket.
microsecond.
Doesn't add up.
No, it doesn't. And that's, again, you don't know if that's fiction or fact. There's so much fiction that was put out by the
Have you
police.
like? I mean, so I know you guys don't have much of a relationship now, but like, are those some of the questions, like the hard questions that like? I mean, again, I think like this is my friend that I'm gonna be like in their face. Tell me
Well,
how this makes sense.
What I think happened, first of all, I think the police took Fleet away from the home we were in that morning or the day after. And he came back after a couple hours and was different. I think the police were leveraging Fleet to use him. You know, we have evidence that the family killed JonBenét and you need to help us here. And I don't know, but they said he was different when he came back from meeting with the police for 2 hours.
Because you guys have like a huge falling out, right? Like,
Well, it was just because it was bizarre. I mean, he came back to Atlanta to attend the funeral, and we made arrangements for our Boulder friends to stay with Atlanta friends in their homes. And our friends that we had that person stay with called, they didn't call us, but they called somebody that was helping us and say, we want him out of our house. He's bizarre, something screwy. And so we put him with my brother. My brother called me a day or so later and said, "Do you have a gun in the house?" And I said, "No." "Well, Fleet is on his way to your house. We were with Patsy's parents. Something's wrong." And
what was he saying? Like, I mean, for your brother to say,
apparently
"Do
he
you
was-
have a gun?" Like, that's
yeah,
scary.
my brother's as passive a person as you ever want to meet.
So what does he say when he gets to you? Because I know in Patsy's deposition, she's like, "I don't know. I was in the basement. Like, I'm not part of that conversation." And it seems like she never like asked you. But like, what is that conversation?
I
that you
don't
guys had?
remember. I honestly don't remember.
And then he comes one more time when you're back in Colorado. Like, comes at you kind of again, like interrupts the
Yeah,
meeting with
we
you.
were with our priest or minister, and he barged in. And I think it was just a hugely, at best, it was a hugely upsetting thing for Fleet to be in the periphery of all this.
At worst.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'd been with him a lot, and I have no doubt that the police used him. Probably said, "Well, John thinks you killed his daughter, and you got to work with us here." Don't know that for a fact, but I wouldn't be surprised. I had Fleet and I used to sail. Fleet was a really expert sailor, and I was not. And I bought this
Were you in
sailboat.
the Navy?
Yeah, that doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's irrelevant.
Sure.
I think it was a sail. You know, I don't know. This is a couple of years later. I sent it back to him with the note and said, "Look, I don't know what the police told you. I'm sure they've probably told you things that weren't true, but I absolutely don't think you were involved in our daughter's murder." And I never heard back from him. But just, I knew him. I knew him well. I knew his kids.
How do you not like go like like shake it out? Like, this is the part that as I'm like I like so hard to understand, and I understand why people spiral. And then his wife, I heard, was telling Patsy like, I need a couple minutes. I might know something, but I'm just like, God, is there something in there? How do you feel like you have to like what is it that like makes you not be not be the Fleet who's like holding onto people's collars?
Yeah. I've told people, look, if you were a male living in Boulder on the 26th or 25th of December 1996, you're a suspect in my book. I can't rule you out. I don't know. I'm so suspicious and frightened and bewildered. You're a suspect in my book. I don't trust you.
What was the deal with the 23rd 911 call? And my favorite character, Fleet White.
Yeah, there's weird stuff like that. What was the deal? Somehow he dialed 911 from our home phone and meant to dial something else. I can't remember. I don't remember if the police came or they just called us back. But we said, no, that was a mistake, I guess.
Did you ever ask him about it?
Ask Fleet?
Yeah.
No. You know, early on, I was just so crushed. I wished I would die. I was that hurt. People said, did you think about suicide? Well, it crossed my mind, but that would impose more hurt on my children, and that's a dumb thing to do. But I would have been happy to die. I was so devastated. So you don't think about much else, I guess, other than your loss. And, as I say, the Fleet stuff was weird, but it didn't fit with who I knew as a person. I remember he didn't react well under stress.
I remember reading this anecdote you had about a sailing with him
Yeah.
and how he just kind of like froze and
Yeah.
you guys had to come get saved by someone.
Well, we'd gotten into really rough weather, and a line had got wrapped around our propeller as we were coming to port. We couldn't steer the boat, and we're getting blown into a big rock wall, and and the weather was blowing like crazy, and we're like, okay, this is the end of the sailboat. We're not going to get killed, but that's going to be the end of the boat. It crashes into that stone wall, and so he just acted very flustered and overwhelmed by difficulty. And so I sort of attributed some of his behavior to that. I don't know.
I know. I think I would just bulldoze through my life. I would probably ruin every relationship I had. Like truly, like if something, I think it would consume me because I think I would pick apart. And maybe these are the people who can survive it and the people who can't. Because I think I would hunt down Fleet White and I would you know what I mean? And I would I would pick it apart, even if it was my own child and probably to the detriment of my child. And I think that's what so many people, we think we know what we're going to do in those situations.
Well, but you can't
Yeah.
assume that. I mean, it's like getting hit by a speeding truck. It's so devastating emotionally. Your system's in shock. I mean,
Have you had different theories over the 30 years or has it been pretty much the same or did it?
John Douglas's theory when he presented that to me was sobering. It's like,
Who hates you that much? Like that.
well, that's what I said to John. I said, we had 700 employees. I knew most of them, but not all of them. We've had to fire some for different reasons. But since I was the president, I guess conceivably they could blame me for the loss of their job, let's say. But I said, I've never made anybody that mad. I can't imagine that. And he said, you may not even know them. They read about you in the paper. They observed we were, Boulder's a very liberal, far-left community. And,
What does that mean?
well, very, it's described jokingly as 32 square miles surrounded by reality. And we knew that going in. We were capitalists. We were businesses, capitalists. They're not really welcome here. It was the feeling we got. But, who could do this to a child? But anyway, John has lots of credit on his resume to being right.
Between him and your PIs, have you over the years come to at least your best working theory of what you think happened, like the order, what was staged?
Oh, I think the person came into our home, when we were gone that evening, went out for dinner, was there when we got home, and waited for us to go to bed. That same scenario happened about 9 months later in the same neighborhood with a little friend of JonBenét's. Fortunately, the mother interrupted it. But to me, they're very potentially the same person. Police blew it off as the same. But I know the father of that second little girl absolutely felt there's a lot of similarities. They knew that the killer was in the house, or fortunately, the child wasn't killed, but they came home, same that we did, set the burglar alarm, went to bed. So the killer the bad guy had to be in the house when
Waiting.
they got home.
So you think he's in the house waiting? Mm-hmm. And then what?
And then we went to bed, and we believe that, as do experts, that a stun gun was used to silence JonBenét. She was taken down the basement.
So you think that he went up to her room first, got her there, and then took her to the basement?
Yeah.
And do you have any? And I know this is like a little bit of details I know you've lived with for a long time. Do they have any ideas about what the intention was? Like what some of the sexual
Well,
activity, some of the choking was
You know,
to cover
the
something up?
Lou Smith, this detective that was brought out of retirement, legendary detective in Colorado, solved over 200 homicides. Amazing man.
Yeah.
Was brought in by the DA because I think the DA suspected the police had it kind of messed up. Lou spent a couple months looking at the evidence and very conclusively, in his mind, said, no, there's lots of evidence of an intruder. His theory was it was a kidnapping gone wrong based on the evidence. And I've always thought those two conflicted between John Douglas's theory and Lou's, but somebody pointed out to me, well, no, they don't necessarily conflict. And it's like, yeah, you're right.
Do they think that the person wrote the note while that he's in the house waiting for you guys to come
Yeah.
home?
John Douglas said nobody could write a 3-page ransom note after murdering a child.
Okay, so that's done earlier.
Their warped brain is going crazy. And he said that note was written before.
Where do you assume it went wrong? So if he wrote this note to get her out, like why does he take her to the basement, you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, she was sexually assaulted, apparently. There was a suitcase. When the so-called detective that was there that day said, well, go look through the house, see if you see anything unusual. And I reported to her that I went to the basement. There was a suitcase standing up on its bottom under a window, and the window was open. I said, that suitcase shouldn't be there. It looks like it may have been a step to get out of the house. And apparently they found, and I don't know this for a fact, but there's so much information out there, you don't know what's right and what's wrong, but they apparently found fibers from JonBenét's clothing in the suitcase, along with a doll or something. And Lou's theory was they may have tried to get her out of the house in the suitcase, and it went wrong, and it didn't work. I don't know.
When you first saw the window, because you had gone down initially, but you said when you first saw the window, you didn't think to mention it.
No,
You
I did
did?
immediately. Yeah, yeah. The window was open, and it had a pane broken in it, and the suitcase propped up underneath. And I told Linda Arndt, the detective, I said, look, that suitcase should not be there.
And you told her this before you guys found JonBenét?
Yeah. I said, maybe that window's broken by me. I don't know, but it shouldn't have been open, and that suitcase shouldn't have been there. And of course, the police came out and said, well, a human couldn't get through that window. Well, I did it. Lou Smith did it.
I saw Lou Smith.
It's crazy.
Example.
They were so focused on convicting Patsy or me that nothing else mattered. And then in January, they had sent some evidence in for DNA sampling, and the report came back middle of January. we've recovered unidentified male DNA from JonBenét's clothing. Does not match anyone in the family. John, Patsy, and Burke are excluded.
Yeah, the first one I think that they found, it was from a blood spot in the underwear, and it was her blood, but it was what they determined, at least based on enzymes, like saliva within the blood spot. Those are the first things that they tested and ruled the family out.
Right. Well, the police kept that a secret from the DA for 6 months because it conflicted with their conclusion. It's like, holy crap, what do we got to do about this? Because it's the first question the defense attorney would ask is, whose DNA is that? Oh, we don't know, but it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. Male DNA found in a sexual assault case is a huge clue. And to discount it is absurd.
And they do eventually go back and get another sample that they put into CODIS from it. They get a large enough profile to put in CODIS, right?
Right. They actually had, the first sample was CODIS qualified as well. A new DA came in and set up her own investigative unit on this case, took the case away from the police. Now, they didn't position it that way in the media. It was like, oh, we want fresh eyes. No, I believe she took it away from the police, brought Lou Smith back in, who had left because he was disgusted with the direction it was going. And they started to investigate it again. And she did additional DNA testing.
And this is like in 2008?
Yeah. And that supported the earlier DNA sampling, that it was an unidentified male DNA and had no explanation. Police tried very hard to explain it away. They even tried to get the county to pay for them to go to China.
I followed that one.
They wanted to go to China
Right.
and start sampling.
But then they when they really honed in on, oh no, this isn't just like everywhere on the underwear. It's just in the blood spots, and we're showing these enzymes that show up in high levels with saliva.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know, I did learn a little bit about DNA, and it's complicated,
It's very complicated.
really complicated.
2008, they do touch DNA on the side of her long john pants, basically saying like, we think that whoever would have pulled her pants down might have done it here. They get 2 profiles, one from each side. They're not nearly as big as the one that went into CODIS, but they say they're consistent with that one.
Right.
And I heard the same thing where they're saying like, in no other case have I seen where you see this much DNA of someone else and we're not looking for someone else.
Right.
When they ended up testing the nylon rope that was around her neck,
I don't know if they ever did. I don't know that.
they tested the rope,
Okay.
but not the wooden handle itself. And the rope came back with an unknown sample,
I didn't know that.
but it didn't match the other ones. And I don't know what that means. Like, has anyone ever
Well,
considered that
Lou
there's-
Smith, and Lou told me, first of all, Lou said, I'll get this guy, John. I'll get him. And he has a track record
of getting them?
of getting him. And sadly, he died of cancer. He believed there were more than one person involved. But he also said, look, there's things I know that only the killer knows, and I'm not going to tell you what those are. I'm not going to tell anybody, but
Did it die with him?
it may have. I'm not sure. Lou had an extensive database of information that now some of his former homicide detective colleagues have formed a group to finish Lou's work. Lou said, this is a DNA case. It'll be solved by DNA.
Have you ever asked to see all of his materials? I mean, at one time you were paying him.
Well, it's huge. Pardon?
I mean, one time you were paying Lou, right? Lou Smith?
No. Lou would, I tried to buy Lou an ice cream cone one day. He wouldn't let me do it. He was that honorable. No, I didn't pay him.
So you never asked to see his stuff?
Well-
I couldn't help it. I would want to.
Well, it was voluminous.
Yeah.
And the group that took over, and they're doing it on their own, they've taken Lou's list and they're starting to go down the list and get
Checking people
DNA. And that costs money. And so they've raised money over time to pay for the DNA testing, but they're not any of their expenses or anything. It's all on their own. And I'm so grateful for that. You know, Lou felt that he had a good enough sample early on that is the killer's DNA. You need 9 markers out of 15 to be submittable to the database, the federal database. you probably know a lot more about this than I do, but
I'm learning.
they determined with these 15 particular markers, it's like 100% match, 15 out of billions. And we had 9 of 15, and 9 was the threshold at which they would admit it to the COVID database is good enough.
I wonder if it's still in there because I know back in the 90s, the database was less. It was lower at 9. And then over the years, I believe they've raised it to be like 13.
Is that right?
And I've seen other cases where because it no longer meets the new standard, it drops out and people didn't even realize that it's not
That's very
in there
possible.
anymore.
I don't know.
Be interesting. It's something I'll need to look into.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know that they raised the threshold, but
Do you know, did they ever test the JonBenét's bathroom? Someone had gone to the bathroom and not flushed. Did they ever test that? Do you know?
I don't know.
Seems like a perfect sample for DNA, and I don't know if they tested and it was hers or
Well,
matter.
the forensics people only spent 2 hours in our house after JonBenét was found looking for evidence. The DA said, get your, what, back in there. 2 hours is not enough. So they went back. I don't know how long they spent when they went back. They did find, they recovered the evidence, some evidence, and a palm print that didn't match anybody on the door going into that room where JonBenét was found.
Didn't match anyone? I thought they saw Patsy's and JonBenét's, but Patsy was, I know, wrapping presents in that room and stuff like that.
Well, we'd go in and out of that room. It was a storage room. We
Yeah.
called it the wine cellar, but there wasn't
Was no wine.
no wine. It was just an old coal cellar.
I don't think I realized that was an unidentified print.
As far as I know, that's still unidentified, as there was in the same case 9 months later, unidentified palm print. Did they check them? No.
You're talking about in the other case in the same
Very
neighborhood?
similar to JonBenét.
I think in the reporting they call her Amy.
Yeah, they blew that off as similar. Because as the police chief said, there's so many quotes I could give you that they said were just nuts. First of all, well, we didn't treat JonBenét's abduction as a crime scene. We thought it was a kidnapping.
That's a crime.
It's a crime, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
On the little girl, the police chief came out and said, well, they're not the same because the second little girl wasn't killed.
Because her mom walked in.
And mom interrupted it. It's just nuts we're dealing with. And that's a real fundamental problem with our system. That little Boulder, Colorado Police Department is an island of authority. People can't come on that island and help unless they're invited. And Boulder Police never invited anybody to come in and help. Lots of was offered, but that's the fundamental problem with our system.
Would that be your hope with JonBenét's case? Like who,
Sure.
in a perfect world, who would you want to take over?
Well, early on, we didn't care who had it. We just wanted it out of the police hands because we knew they were, A, focused on us and B, incompetent. Give it to the sheriff's department. We didn't care. Just get it out of their hands because they're not capable. We would like the evidence to be turned over to the FBI and let the FBI run with the evidence, do some additional DNA testing.
So where do you think the evidence is? Do they still have it? What do you think is still can be tested? What can we pull this new
Well,
file from?
we were told, we know from looking at reports and stuff early on in January '97, there were a number of items sent into a lab. Some were returned untested. Don't know why. Whether it's a cost issue or they had a sample. They did get a sample of what they tested. Maybe they decided that's good enough. I don't know. We want those other items tested. We want the items that had previously been tested 15 years ago, most recently, retested, developing this new format that's needed to do the genealogy research. That's what we're asking. So as far as we know, there's items that crime scene evidence that was taken from the crime scene, sent to a lab, but was never tested.
It seems pretty straightforward. Like, what do you feel is? Because to me, on the outside, I'm like, why wouldn't Boulder want to solve its biggest case?
There's only two logical reasons. One is they've lost the evidence, which I hope isn't true. Or two, they're protecting somebody that is very, that's a silly number two. But I can't think of any other reason. They've lost the evidence.
Do you feel like, I mean, you're somebody who has like amazing connections and political pull, like, do you feel like there's anything that you can do, or you've tried it all? Like, where?
We've tried a lot. We petitioned the Attorney General in Colorado. We petitioned the governor. This is early on, to meet with us, and they wouldn't meet with us.
You think this would be a great case for someone to, I mean, if they're gonna at least work the system, you could solve the JonBenét Ramsey case.
Well, you'd think so. And I've told, Boulder's had 5 police chiefs since this happened.
Have you met with the newest one yet?
Yeah.
Does he say anything about whether they have the evidence, don't have the evidence? Are you waiting?
I've never challenged him on, have you lost it?
What do you mean, John?
Well, I've got another meeting coming up.
Yeah.
Well, the first meeting,
This is the
I
stuff.
was trying to be a nice guy and not jump all over him. He was a new guy at his job. I liked him. We had a nice conversation. And it was like, I need to.
What does he say? Like, where does he say it stands?
Well, he says there's things happening I can't tell you about, and I think DNA testing isn't there yet. We want to wait. And I totally disagree with the last comment. We're going to ask the hard question. Have you, and you didn't lose it. You're the new guy. It's not your fault. But is the evidence still in your possession? Where is it?
And if it's not there, what does that make you think?
Well, it confirms my opinion that the Boulder Police was a pretty dysfunctional organization for years.
Does that mean-
Frankly,
does that mean it's just over for you guys? Like,
well, that's a huge thing, yeah, to have if that's the case, because we have the technology, in my opinion, privately, to do testing that I really believe has a good chance of leading to the answer.
do you think it's someone, whether you recognize them or not, someone that would have had some kind of interaction with your daughter before?
Well, I think the person had been in our house before, no question. We have this Carr guy, Mark Carr. We've had 2 people that said, well, I saw that guy around you. I know it's him. Our house, we had a lady that would come into our little house up in Michigan and clean it once in a while before we got there. And she called after he became public and said, that guy was in your garage this past summer.
How do you make sense of that if the DNA?
Well, I don't know. I don't know.
Does that make you go back and question the DNA?
Well, I asked Lou that question. I said, do you believe that this is the killer's DNA for sure? He said, yes, I believe that.
Okay.
So, okay. Based on that, well, the other thing she said was when I was in your home that day, somebody had been staying in JonBenét's room. There was a suitcase open, and obviously somebody was staying in your room. I thought you'd given someone permission to stay in your home. Didn't think anything of it. When this guy came out, she said, I saw him in the garage, and then she told us about somebody staying in her home. I said, no, we didn't give anybody permission to stay in our home. And why would they have picked JonBenét's room? If you're gonna squat in a house, you wouldn't have picked that room. It's second floor, way in the back. You couldn't get out of there easily if you were caught.
I think new testing is going to be important. I don't know if you have thoughts or feelings on, have you seen all the stuff that's been happening with like the Colorado State lab?
Yeah.
Do you have any concerns? So Missy Woods, I believe is her name, she's been accused of like falsifying, I mean, like 600 and some cases between like 2008 and 23. They're looking at even older cases. Is this something that you've talked to anyone in authority about? Like, do you have
No.
concern that it affects the testing that you guys had done?
We were told, our attorneys looked into it, and they're still working on the case for us for free. They don't charge us. They're so committed to getting this righted. They said she was not involved in our testing
That's good.
back then. It's like, okay. So that's the information we have.
That's really good. What's it going to take to do new testing?
Well, what we were told probably a year or so ago now, it's been over a year. At that time, we just accidentally met the head of the FBI region there. And he said, look, the government, we, the FBI, certainly not Boulder, not CBI, do not have the latest DNA technology yet.
And who said that?
The chief of police.
Because they got a new one, right? Or is this
Well,
the
the
last
current
one?
one.
The current one.
Yeah. Get the evidence into their hands. And let's see what they come up with. They have also the ability to do the genealogy research, create this family tree.
Yep. Even to give you, I mean, the phenotyping that they can do to answer the question of, okay, we know it's a male profile, but is it a white man?
Right.
Is it not?
I don't know what else to do. But if they don't do that, then that's unacceptable. That's ridiculous. It's there, can be done. I've offered to pay for it. I don't know what the issue is. I really don't know why they won't do all that can be done.
I'll have to ask some questions of them.
Yeah, we're going to get a little more hard-nosed in our next meeting. First question be, do you have the evidence? Be honest. Have you lost it? Where is it? Who has it?
Sounds like a good next step.
Yeah. Right now, in my mind, that's the key question. Why? Where is it? If you're not going to test it, why? It's baffling. Absolutely baffling to me. And, maybe it's down to police departments don't like to admit they've been wrong or they screwed up. And I can't believe that with the new police chief. I mean, he didn't cause that problem. He didn't mess it up.
Do you think they're afraid of opening themselves up to litigation?
Possibly. Very possibly.
Do you think you would sue them, or
I
are
don't
you?
know. I explored that early on because we were again told they knew it was one of the parents, had to be one of the parents, always the parents. And that's a flawed conclusion. But
There's no one theory that makes everything make sense.
no, not really. I don't know. Lou said this is a DNA case. It'll be solved by DNA, period. And that's why this testing is so important. I don't know. I used to, Patsy, when we'd travel, always packed a blue dress, dark blue dress that she was going to wear at the press conference when JonBenét's killer was found. We were hopeful, confident that would happen. And she eventually quit packing the blue dress. Somebody asked me the other day, do you think JonBenét's killer would be found in your lifetime? I'm not so confident now at all. I think eventually they will be caught or identified, but maybe not in my lifetime, given the fact that there's no movement in the government to do the right thing. If they do it, I think there's pretty good possibility that we could find the killer. Now the killer may be dead, maybe, who knows, but this forensic genealogy research is amazing. And eventually that won't be available because the privacy advocates will fuss. They're already fussing, but so far so good, But so you can't wait on that forever because eventually you won't have, the police will not have access to that. I mean, my DNA is in the public database. I just paid my $25 to see who my relatives were. So it's my.
But did you submit it to GEDmatch? That's a different thing.
No, I don't know what's that.
So this is my advocacy. I always tell people.
Yeah.
So like certain like Ancestry and 23andMe, they're no longer available to law enforcement. So people
I didn't know that.
I know. Most people don't. And so you actually have to
Whoa.
download your results and submit it to GEDmatch. GEDmatch is the one that law enforcement can access. So there actually is this big issue where people think they've done it and they actually haven't, which could build up the database in a really meaningful way. So
Wow,
anyone
I didn't
listening.
know that. I thought those were still available.
Yeah.
That's a big problem.
Yeah.
What's it called?
GEDmatch, GED, GEDmatch.
Okay.
Do you feel like you'll always have the indictment kind of hanging over you until there's someone else who's indicted?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's always going to be. It's an unknown.
Is there any, like, does that mean anything now? Like, could somebody say, oh, we have this indictment from 30 years ago, we can still go charge John? Or would they have to get a new grand jury indictment? Like, is it, I don't know how
I don't
scary
know.
of a looming thing that is.
Yeah, I don't know. A grand jury, as I'm told, you can convict a ham sandwich in a grand jury. It's a one-sided argument.
Right.
It's easy to get an indictment.
It is. It's just the prosecution's
Yeah.
case. But you guys weren't asked to even speak at that, were you?
I offered to do that,
Yeah.
and they didn't ask me or subpoena me. My children were interviewed by the grand jury. Burke was interviewed. Melinda, my daughter, who was pregnant at the time, was brought into Colorado to be interviewed by the grand jury. So their attorneys were present with them.
It's strange. It's so strange they would interview everyone but you.
I know. And I offered, I said, let me know. And I think they were afraid that,
I think people think it's calculated. Like, I think that's the thing that nobody's like saying, or people even, in the depths of the internet are saying is like, it feels like there's someone pulling the strings.
we had no rights. Police, the only requirement they had was to talk to us once a year on our case. That, by law, they had to do that. And first time we asked for that meeting, they said, well, geez, we don't know how to do this exactly. You're a suspect and you're a victim. This Homicide Victims Family Rights Act gives families like us the right, under law, to get the case out of the police hands if they're not doing their job or they haven't done their job.
What I read is that if after 3 years it's still a cold case, you can submit to have a federal review.
Yeah. Well, I'd thought about that a bit, of like this law, this federal law. That could be JonBenét's law. If it advanced the cause, it'd be good. But I'm not looking for that kind of memorialization of her. But you want to be sure your home is safe as it could be for your family. We were naive. We were foolish, naive. We thought we lived in a safe community. We didn't check the door locks. We didn't set the alarm. Who in the world would come into the house when we're there? If they came in and we're gone, steal the silverware, okay, whatever. Never, ever thought someone would come into our home when we were there and take our child from her bed. But it happens. And your home's got to be a sanctuary, a safe sanctuary, safe as you can make it.
Are you doing anything to get this Victims Families Rights Act pushed through to Colorado?
Well, I just found out about it.
Okay.
And I've got to do that. If that's the one thing, if anything could, I've always said, what can we do to change the system? The system's screwed up, big time.
Yeah.
I don't know how to fix it. These 18,000 little independent jurisdictions of authority with no higher authority, no ability to bring in the big guns when a child's murdered is stupid. Makes no sense. But what can I do to affect it? And early on, I was advocating DNA testing for anyone arrested for a felony. Mm-hmm. It's always come back to how do you make these little islands of authority, like Boulder, able or willing to accept the power of our country to solve cases like ours, the murder of a child. And so I got to thinking, well, let's make the murder of a child a federal offense, just like a bank robbery. That seemed very logical.
Did you make any headway with it?
Well, I met with the Department of Justice, and they said, well, that's going to be a tough sell because the federal government doesn't have that Lexus, I think he called it, to have even that authority to try to do that, to overstep state law. He said, that's going to be a tough
So now this
road.
is your new mission?
So my new mission, I learned about this just recently, and I'm retired now, so I got the time to do it, is I met, again, a federal Department of Justice fellow that pushed the federal government to enact a Homicide Victims Family Rights Act.
Are you going to focus because I know Biden signed it into law in 2021 federally, but to your point, not in a state.
Yeah.
Are you going to focus on Colorado or JonBenét's
Well,
cases? Or?
what it gets down to, and the DOJ fellow said, look, it's easy. It's boilerplate. Here's the law. Mr. Senator, state senator, put your name at the top, vote on it. You're done. That's all you got to do. It's real simple. Colorado would be a tough sell, I think, because politicians don't want to be involved in our case. It's like a tar baby. If I touch it, I'm tainted. The media will come. The media's been brutal.
Would you advocate for it in another state?
Sure.
Yeah.
And I say I literally just found out about this recently, and I've got to do it. But I think that's a purpose I could
Get behind.
advocate and get behind, and maybe make it, maybe make a difference. But it's going to take, like, I don't know any politicians in Colorado. They probably know me, but I don't know them. And maybe that's a good place to start.
What do you think JonBenét's legacy is?
She was kind of the spark plug of her family. I mean, and you know, my minister told me early on. He said, "Look, memories for a while are going to bring pain, but eventually they'll bring joy." And to a large extent, I found that you've been able to get past the pain period, and memories make you smile. And I still get tugged. My heart gets tugged when I see a little girl hanging under her dad's hands, walking down the street. You know, that hurts. But I remember the neat things about JonBenét, the fun things. You know, I believe that she's in heaven. I don't understand heaven. I don't have my brain isn't capable of comprehending what that is. But, you know, I did get one reassurance that life wasn't over for her in that respect. She had won this little medal in one of her little contests, beauty contests. And I used to tell her, look, it doesn't matter if you're the prettiest or whatever, your little talent is what you should concentrate on. And she was a singer, and always with vigor, but sometimes off key. It wasn't, but she was, you know, boom. And she had her last little event was a couple weeks before she died, and I was late to get there. But I always tried to go to watch her little talent thing. And she came running up to me and said, Dad, I won this for you. And it was a medal, and it was all talent winner. And she gave me that little medal, and I wore it around my neck. And when she died, in my mind, I wanted to get that medal back. It was in our house. But I didn't tell anybody. I just, in my mind, that's the one thing I wanted JonBenét's that I can keep physically. And Pam, Patsy's sister, went to our house, I don't know, a week later to get us some clothes because we just left. We didn't have any clothes to wear or anything. And she said, I went to the house. Please, you're kind of rude. But I felt drawn to go into JonBenét's room. And I felt like I should bring you this. And she opened her hand. It was a medal. And her room was full of stuff, you know.
Wow.
How she would bring this little round, about the size of a silver dollar medal and felt like I should bring this to you. And I could have cried because it's like JonBenét knew I wanted that somehow. So there's more to life than we see here.
Well, thank you, John.
Well, you're welcome, Ashley.
I'll make sure
Thanks for being here.
the stuff that we talked about, again, the legislation that you're doing, the petition to get the DNA signed, I'll make sure everyone has the information for that. And I know we've got this Netflix thing coming out that everyone will watch, and I think everyone is going to have an eye on Boulder.
Well, that's the objective.
Yeah.
This, boys, this isn't going to go away. We're going to be your worst nightmare until you do your job.
All eyes on Boulder.